From Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And welcome back to episode 26 of the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And I'm Mike, and I'm joined today by Jill. Say hi, Jill.
Hey.
Matt.
Hey, everybody.
And Jane.
Hello.
And Jane is back with us. She's going to do an episode with us and hopefully do a lot more episodes with us. So
Absolutely.
glad to have her. Glad to have her back. And if you just tuned in, listen to the previous episode. That way Jane doesn't have to reintroduce herself. How about that?
Sure.
There you go. There you go.
And so tonight we have we're going to talk about, and I don't know why I always say tonight.
And I was
It's-
like, wait, what?
It's morning, actually. You still say good morning to people at this time of day. But we're going to talk about step 8 and step 9, and very important, steps in our program, which all 12 are. We've been through 1 through 7. We've been through some principles. We've had some guest speakers. We've had, we read a little bit out of the book. We read a little bit here. We read a little bit there. But that brings us to the point where we're at now. And episode 25 was a really good episode. Jane told her story, and we got to learn a whole lot about her. We got to learn a whole lot about her program and people in AA and just things in general from around the sobriety community here locally and maybe even some abroad. But good episode. I really enjoyed it. Here in 8 and 9, I'm going to start with what the big book says, okay? And I have my big book is pulled up on an iPad. So, but this is in the chapter Into Action in the big book, which a lot of the steps are, in case y'all haven't noticed. More than half of the steps are covered in that one chapter. But it goes, now we need more action, and this is following our 7th step. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9, and it says them both in italics or squiggly writing, as some people call it, which is very important. And back in the day, it cost more to publish squiggly writing than it did straight font. So that tells you they spent a little extra cash getting the book, in the writing process. But let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we had harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we need to go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris, or debris, as some people say, which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning, and once again in squiggly writing, we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. So, and it takes us, after this paragraph, it's going to take us through some amends process and some stuff. But we're going to go back, let's just go back a little bit here to step 8. These are 2 individual steps, just like 6 and 7, just like 4 and 5. They're individual steps to be worked on their own. And I would imagine your sponsors will know how to do that if you're new to the program. That's, this is something that requires adult supervision. Sure. But let's just go back to step 8, right? And according to the book, according to what I just read anyway, we already made our list back when we did our drastic self-appraisal. So, it was my experience, and I can only speak for me, but it was my experience that, one, my first trip through the steps, I really didn't, I kind of didn't know what I was doing. I had a sponsor, had a very good sponsor. He knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I go through this drastic self-appraisal, and I still have a hard time making a list. I still can't figure out who I've harmed, even though it's there. It's there. Maybe it's me not wanting to admit it. So I put down the easy ones, the real quick ones, because in my mind I'm thinking step 9 anyway, right? I'm going to put down the ones that I'm going to be willing to actually go talk to. I'm not going to put down the ones that I don't have
The good ones.
yeah, the ones that really need to come out. I'm not, but that was where I was. Now we worked through that. Me and my very first sponsor worked through that. And we used index cards. And we used a lot of stuff to get this list written. We really did. He really prodded me, and I wouldn't even call it pressure because he was a very gentle man. Do you remember Dale?
I do.
Yeah, Dale H was my very first sponsor, and we got through it. I'm sure John Jay was in the background somewhere. Those guys were best friends back when Dale was still alive, but we got through that, and it was by him asking me a series of questions related around my step 4 and my step 5. But ultimately, even the ones that I did not want to make, I didn't want to make amends to. I didn't have the courage to. I knew I needed to. I didn't have the courage to. We would ultimately put them down on this list and help us in the moving forward process of this step. So anybody wants to go first, let's hear your experience with step 8.
I got one question, though, while you're on that. What do you mean by a series of questions?
We would go
To
back.
kind of prod you?
Yeah, he would go back through and ask me, okay, so what about this that happened in you talked to me about this. Do you think you didn't harm someone in this situation? Right.
Making you think it out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. He asked why a lot.
And did you have any that you thought were amends that you needed to make that he told you, no, don't worry about that it wasn't?
No, I think my biggest problem was
Leaving off.
I wanted to make amends to some folks before I'd even done step 1. Mm-hmm. That was probably my biggest problem.
I think that's everybody's. That was my experience, but I did listen to Bobby, my sponsor, and that's the biggest thing with this is adult supervision, and it gets really important because this can get out of hand, it can get weird, and my biggest thing was going through 8 and 9 for me was the action part of it. It wasn't financial amends and things like that so much. It was more related to family and like where, being undependable, unreliable, selfish, and focusing on that and making a living amends. So I'm still doing that 5 years later, and I'll do it till I die, but that was where a lot, which I think we all are, the self-centered and selfish, and but I didn't have any either that he said you don't owe an amends. But I've heard different steps and different things, and we may project something that's not even worth fooling with, but something we don't think is a big deal. That's why it's important with a sponsor. But did y'all run into any of that?
Oh, I definitely did. With my first sponsor, I told you my 5th step was just throwing up on paper and reading it to her. And then when I did my list, she said, you don't know him in amends, you partied with him. You don't know her amends, you did this with her. You don't, which I found out later was not necessarily the right way of thinking because it was on my heart and my mind. And I had another sponsor that said, if you keep thinking about it, you need to take action. So I think the biggest thing is you said your sponsor.
Right.
And yeah, Mike mentioned having a sponsor that he did it with and making amends before you even at step 8 and 9. Just recently, some woman got in trouble for writing a letter to her kid to apologize. And I'm like, what step are you on? What do you mean, what step am I on? I said, what are you doing making a letter to somebody when you aren't on step 9? Well. And, that's one thing I grabbed onto is my sponsor said, you don't make amends to people until you're ready to make amends. Because amends are not saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've heard all my life. I said I'm sorry so many darn times that people got sick and tired of hearing me say I'm sorry because I never had changed behavior.
Right.
So until I've worked the first 7 steps, I don't know how to change my behavior. So my first sponsor definitely had told me no. My second time I did a step 5, and then did the step 8, my sponsor said, you don't have to make amends to that person. It remained on my heart. And I ended up trying to make amends, and they wouldn't accept them. But at least I was sober 9-10 years when I did that. But definitely, I take the advice that Mike said. You don't do them when you're not even on step one. And, your sponsor tells you the best advice they can give you because they've been there, done that.
Sure.
And I've had to use that, like, slow down. And when I got sober, as when, I know you two as well, social media, it was a thing, but it wasn't the thing, and I've heard people say that, they just get on social media and make their amends through social media. And, and I've heard that. I've heard that meeting. None of my sponsees. I've never had that happen with none of my sponsees. But that is, to me, not a way to make amends. That's not an amends. That's like you said, that's an I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Kind of like there's a difference between gratitude and thanks.
Right.
So, gratitude obviously being, I'm going to show you I'm grateful for what I have or what you've done. And thanks is just, hey, thanks.
I couldn't agree more.
Give me more, give me more. Well, the same with this, I'm sorry and making an amends. And I tried to do it on my own. In truth be known, my entire life was shattered into a million pieces, 1,000 pieces, whatever. I didn't have a million pieces. Let's say 1,000. And God was picking them up and putting them back in place, the ones I needed, as He saw fit. I let God do His thing. And when I start getting in there and doing that stuff without a sponsor, and so I'm trying to rush the process so I can feel better, and I'm not really and truly all about making my amends, then naturally I'm going to mess it up. And, the amends that I jumped out there and made at 2 months sober, maybe, that turned out to be a complete disaster, wasn't actually made until a decade later. It just wasn't actually, the real amends was not made till the time did not come until a decade after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This wasn't the time yet.
Yeah. It just wasn't there. So, and we can, oh God, I get my microphone straight. But we can talk about that one, all day. But I had to, and back to your point, Matt, I just come to think of it. There was a couple of people on my amends list that my sponsor told me I didn't have to make amends to. There was. Now that I think about it and look at it in a whole different context, there was, things that involved my childhood that had nothing to do with me, but yet I brought them up in my 4th step and my anger against them and, how I felt. But, and now I'm kind of like Jane, if something's on my heart, if something's just there and it's not going away, then I gotta get it taken care of.
I made an amends the other day with a person in the program, and she brought up something from way back, and it was a passing moment. Wasn't even nothing I thought, and my intent at the time was not anything to hurt her feelings or whatever. But she happened to bring it up again, and I thought about it. I was like, I guess I owe her an amends, And so I did. I made an amends with her, and it was cool. And she was like, well, I can't believe it. I said, well, it got me to thinking about it. And I was like, I looked at it from your point of view, and yeah, I mean, maybe I could. And I said that wasn't my intent, but we're good now, But it's also that thing of sometimes we do something and God has a little nudge, a reminder of like, I didn't intend to do that with the lady, but it hurt her feelings. So, and the fact that she brought it up that long ago, I was like, huh. So, I don't know. One of those
God
Things.
Nudges.
I do
Yeah.
too. I get them a lot because I'm hard-headed. Sometimes it's a kick in the butt, not just a nudge. What about you, Jill?
Well, starting off first with step 8, that was so easy for me. I mean, I knew who I'd hurt. It was blatantly obvious, and I was able to go through that like really quickly. Plus, I'd been in treatment for a long time and already kind of hashed a lot of it out. But it was still important that I redo that and, get started on those amends. And to me, it was the people I loved the most. Mostly family members are the people that I hurt the most. But yeah, there were quite a few that absolutely my sponsor was like, hell no. Because if you're going to harm yourself or harm someone else, then no. that's not appropriate. I did not need to go back to my drug dealer and pay him the money that I stole. That would have been a horrible idea. I may not be sitting here.
Yeah, probably. Sure. Probably not a good idea.
But what's like what you were just saying, Matt, what's really cool is throughout the decade or whatever, like I'll just be in a random place and I'll see someone and then automatically I get embarrassed. I'm like, oh God. And I was able to do that like at Circle K, run into an old friend that owned bars that I just got banned from a couple. I mean, just I was complete ass. And I was able to be like, hey man.
There's a lot of people in this program that tell some wild stuff, and I can immediately go, "Yeah, I get it. I can feel the spirit."
This one
Jill
here
just would throw you off if you've never seen Jill, and then you hear her story, and you're just going, "How does this happen?" Like
the church lady on SNL.
yeah, isn't that special? You know?
Seriously, to me, it just seems
But Jill's
absolutely
just her whole
normal.
life of crime there, you know, and then you see Jill, and you're just like, "How is this the same deal?" But thank God for AA.
Yeah, think about
Banned from a club.
been banned for many clubs. But I was able to make amends with him. And that was really cool. Those spontaneous ones that you just happen to run into and you're like, oh, I hear you, God. Or it's just like, this was the time. This was when it was meant to be. The amend process is still going on. This isn't something I just did once and I was like, I'm done. I still will drop the hat if it's something I need to do to help my sister, my mother, my dad, my niece and nephew, or whomever. It's important that I still do that because this wasn't just one time I screwed them over or hurt them. It was a good 20 plus years of just bullshit. Mm-hmm. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say, but well, it's gone.
Yeah.
It'll be back.
It will. It'll come back when it's supposed to.
So, like, let me ask y'all this and tying in with all this. And, like, with mine, it was a lot of family stuff, and it still is. So, coming in the program, and then I was probably 9 or 10 months when I did 8 and 9, somewhere in there, because I was in treatment for about 90 days. So, I do that, and I start that amends process, and then some of them are living amends. And then I struggle with my behaviors to keep those amends. Like I go, oh wait, I'm gonna cuss, but I'm still a shithead, you know. Like I want to make the amends, but I don't know how to do. So that's been the journey on that thing. It's like when I say I'm still working on those, I'm still trying to fix my behaviors to where it is an amends to those people, you know, and old things just pop up. My default settings are horrible. Okay. So
I think, Matt, that's where you need to offer yourself some grace, like you were talking about last.
well, yeah, I mean, yes, that is true. That is true. But you know, it's still, I just kind of, sometimes I get caught up and I go, yeah, like this is going to be a process. This is not snap your fingers and all your bad stuff goes away, you know. So
You're right.
Well,
You're
it wouldn't be any
absolutely right.
fun.
that's true.
You just woke up tomorrow morning and you were perfect. What would the point in any of this be?
I, you know, talking about treatment centers, I tell them all the time, and they ask, "Hey, what do I do? What do I do?" And I go, "I wish I could like snap my fingers and everybody in the room be like 3 years, you know, have 3 years clean and sober. But if I did that, y'all all go right back out because it'd be too easy. It'd be too.
you need to go through the, oh gosh.
Yeah,
Like
the
pill
struggle.
that will make you feel better. Only one is needed, but I'm going to take 3 or 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, so what I was thinking about, there were just so many different types of amends that I needed to make. You know, of course, the people that I hurt, I mean, this was all of them, but financial amends, that was huge for me because I was pretty much a freeloader for quite a while. And so my sponsor was like, you need to start paying your family. And I was like, I'm making $8 an hour, and the IRS just literally, my first paycheck, found out where it worked and was like, gotcha. You know, I was like, okay. So anyway, yeah, I started sending $5 a paycheck to my mom, my sister, and my dad until they were like, please stop. And I did that. It was important for me, and that's not even near the amount of money they've spent on me. But it was the action and knowing that I would just do that just because. And the last one, of course, the living amends. And I think that's one that like broke my heart the most because I lost someone that I was dating to suicide because of alcoholism. And gosh, how do you do that? How do you do that? And that was a long process because first I had to write the process letter, which I couldn't even attempt in my first 90 days because I just cried because I blamed myself for his death. But, you know, when I left treatment, I got with a sponsor. I was able to write a letter to him and take it to his grave, read it to him. And it helped. It helped. You know, I still think there's just going to be pain there, period, that no amount of amends will ever cure. But I stay sober for him because he didn't get a chance to. Mm-hmm. I stay sober for my family because that makes them happy. I mean, it makes me happy too, but there's just so many different ways that I make living amends because I need to.
Well, you're a changed person.
Yeah.
So it's a heck of a lot easier today than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But those are just some of the different ways I've made amends. And, you know, just staying sober, helping another alcoholic, and just being the best person I can be and treating other people well is just how I make things right.
And we have to make, and two, people listening with this that haven't done this step, and that's where I try to keep in mind when we're doing this is like that. So you can make the attempt. It's not always going to be that you're welcomed with open arms or that somebody may not tell you to go jump off a bridge. And that part's okay. This is action, action, action. We do the best we can do to clear our side of it up. You know, the result, whatever that result of that is, of us working with a sponsor, identifying, and then making that amends, that's all we can do. We don't control the result of that.
True. And I never had any bad results. I know that that's been different for a hell of a lot more people. But all of mine have been pleasant. But like I said, I didn't have many outside of my family.
Jill, as wild as you were, I think everybody was just glad you got some.
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you, they really are.
You know, in the big book, it talks about, you know, the man may throw you out of his office. You know, I mean, just and in my head, I'm thinking of all these offices I'm gonna have to go to make amends because you know it's written in 1930s. But anyway, I got the step 8 in the 12 and 12. So there's a couple things I want to read out of here. Right, first is the first paragraph. Step 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relations. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. Back to living amends, right? It's not just an I'm sorry, and it may not be something that I can make right. It's just I've got to worry about my side of the street. If I keep it clean and keep doing the right thing, then I'm doing everything I possibly can do. But here's one in the 12 and 12 that this little paragraph right here is one that almost forgotten at some point. I believe it might be one of the daily reflections reading. But anyway, the emotional harm we have done ourselves. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll start over there. In many instances, we shall find that though the harm done others has not been great, the emotional harm we have done ourselves, very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. That sounds pretty deep, right? That sounds like really deep. Like you might break it down for me a little bit, but it's only 2 sentences. But we've actually, in some of these instances, we've done ourselves some major damage by what we have done and emotional harm to ourselves that exists below our level of everyday thinking. So then there's something that may come up in our recovery that spurns that and makes me want to do what I know to do, which is not good, right? And then, of course, another thing that comes out of step 8 and the 12 and 12, it talks about a lot about forgiveness. This is when we learn to forgive ourselves, when we learn how to forgive other people, and emotional security and peace of mind. And then the very last sentence, or the very last paragraph, whenever our pencil falters, we can fortify and cheer ourselves by remembering what AA experience and this step has meant to others. It is the beginning of the end of isolation from our fellows and from God. So in that little bit of what I read, right, just kind of says, hey, if I'm going to end my isolation, I'm going to have to get this done, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just in step 8. Like, I haven't even dove off into step 9 in the 12 and 12. That strictly goes by step 8. And so I can honestly say there was 10 people on my list whenever I made a list. Start with the easy ones. Okay, of course, your wife, or currently ex-wife, your kids, mom, dad, sisters, maybe my grand. I'm struggling to find folks, but by the time we've actually done this step and we've the prodded questions and stuff, maybe as many as 25 on there, And then there was some that I said, I'm not going to reach out. I'm not going to bring up those bad memories for those people, partially because I didn't want to do that. I lack courage, by the way. I didn't want to do that. So there was one in particular, though, that I can think of that I said, if I ever see the guy, I'll make an amends. How about that? That was my deal with Odell. And I was getting off an airplane in Denver, Colorado. I had a connecting flight in Denver. So I flew from Shreveport to wherever to Denver, and then from Denver I was going to fly on to, I don't know, Seattle or somewhere. But when I got off my connecting flight in Denver, that guy was sitting in the waiting area right there, waiting to get on the plane I just got off of. The guy that I said if I ever see him again. Now, he's from Mississippi. Sorry, Matt. I forgot he's from Mississippi. He may not even understood what I was saying.
From Mississippi.
But somehow he ends up from Mississippi in this airport in Denver, Colorado, and at the time I think I was living in Monroe, end up in this airport in Denver, Colorado at the same exact time. And this is the one I said that if I ever run across him, I'll make an amends. And do you know, I got off, I shook his hand, and I was like, he asked me how I was doing, told him great, asked how he was doing, and then I started walking, and I got about 20 yards, and I said, this opportunity will never happen again. You need to turn around and go back and do what you got to do. And I did not want to. I just did not want to. So I turned around and went back and did what I had to do. I made my amends with him, and all's well. Everything. I think shortly after that, he reached out to me. Back then, I had a Facebook profile. He reached out to me, and, we talked. But I felt so much better. I don't even know why. But I felt so much better after I did that. But he was one of the ones that had to be brought out on my original, 8th step, making that list. This guy had to be brought out on it. So,
yeah, I had them added on to me as well. I think I had like 2 on my list or something. Not that I had more than that, but yeah, when you start really, you get into selfishness with people and just forget money for a minute, taken away from other people as far as selfishness, time, or whatever that might be. Mine was long. So
my list was quite long.
Right.
When I finally made a list. It took me a while to make a list. I was telling you all before the podcast, I was the victim here. I had not done anything wrong. And when I finally developed a conscience, which I didn't have before Alcoholics Anonymous, I had quite a long list. I was able to make amends to all my husbands. My last big amends, which was like 9th step amends, was I was 20 years sober, and I found someone on Facebook that I had done something really crappy to when I was 17. I was partying at her college, and I met a guy and left. Didn't tell her. This is way before phones. Never told her anything. I was gone for 2 days. She called my mother.
Yeah.
The Janes disappeared. They're ready to call the police and go looking for me. And I'm shacked up with some guy in his dorm, you know. So I called her and said, look, you know, I'm really sorry. That this was my goal. This is what I did. I was wrong. And if there's any way to make it up to you, I will. She goes, oh, no, I'm still getting high. Don't worry about it.
Whoa.
Yeah, amends are great. I mean, I was able to make amends with a girl that I beat up one night. And she just said, she was like, I'm just so proud of you. I mean, everybody knew I was a drunk and everything else.
Jill, I just think your whole world just breathed a sigh of relief. They're like, Jill has a sobriety date, you know? Yay.
I'm serious. Even old friends are like, thank God.
Some obscure friend has checked out this podcast today.
We're going to get a voicemail. Hey, Jill beat me up back in 82. We were on
After
the
I
bus
banned her
together.
from the bar.
That's right. She was 6 trying to get in my bar, you know, underage.
But seriously, the most, like I was saying, the most difficult one, of course, was Will. And as far as like what happened between us was he drank all the beer one night because we would split a case. And I came back to his house and I was like, oh my God, I just lost my shit on him. I mean, I was just like, why would you not leave me my 12 pack? So he just drank the whole thing and I lit into him. I cussed him out. And those are the last words he got to hear out of my mouth was the ugly things that I said to him. And the thing is, like, he killed himself like a couple of days later, but I didn't get to make amends. And the thing is, like, my changed behavior, I don't cuss people out anymore. I don't talk to people like that because that shattered my heart in a million pieces, and it still gets to me because that's like, wow, that was me. Like, I was so selfish that was my beer that I needed to cuss you out and made you feel just a little bit more like shit when you already were feeling like shit. So, man, I'm really big on the golden rule and treating people the way I want to be treated. That's the last time I've talked like that. It's important.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Thanks.
Treating people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, and some of us come into this thing where, you know, we feel like we have been mistreated by everybody in the world up until now. Like Jane said, a perfect example. We are the victim. And we come in and we think everybody has treated us poorly, so we're going to start treating everyone poorly. And that is just not the way. I mean, I can't operate like that. I can't.
I'll give you a exact quote of one of mine off of doing 8 and 9, and I did it with my sponsor, and this is what he told me. This is where my head was at back then and how I had no way of looking at affecting anyone else. How my stuff, right? So I had both my parents on my list of that they had done me wrong. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm mad. I wouldn't be this way if it was. They were just a long group on a list of, and so I'm reading off this thing with him, and I said, you know, I mean they made me go to church. They made me do all that. And Bobby's driving down the road, and he looks over at me and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, wait, your parents made sure you had clothes to wear every day, and they made you go to church? They made you go to school and get good grades? And he goes, they fed you every day?
Yeah.
And he goes, they did all that stuff? And I was like, oh, well, yeah. And he goes, what's your problem? And I was like, okay, scratch those off. Okay.
Just kidding.
My bad. Those were my big ones,
It's all
you know.
perspective.
Yeah. But I mean, how far have I come now to look back on that and go, God, my head was so far up my own butt. Like, it was just the world revolved around me and everyone was out to get me, you know?
And I find that true with a lot of people and their parents.
Yeah.
And it was cool, you know, doing all these steps and being able to let them off the hook for stupid. I thought that was wrong. And it's like, man, they were just doing the best they could. ridiculous.
And I look back at like now with the program, and then I think back to my parents and what they were raised up like, and they were doing the best they could that maybe they knew how to do at the time. And, you know, I mean, overall, big picture, I had it better than 99.9% of the people out there.
Exactly.
So, and he's looking at me, my sponsor's looking at me like, this guy's a maniac. Like, I can't even believe, but that was where I was at, you know?
Yeah, my parents took a beating too.
Yeah.
Why, I don't know. Like, I was just father of the year.
This, my mother's in town this weekend for her birthday, but I talked to her a few months ago, and we were talking, and she looked at me and said, I finally got my son back. That's what she told me. And
She was talking about your brother.
yeah, well, she didn't specify which son. So, you know, that's open for interpretation. But to go from where I was and how I was doing, you know, that's just a credit to being around you guys and a sponsor and my higher power. For
And
sure.
to Matt's credit, I saw it. You know, his mom actually came and listened to him tell his story one time. Has she came to any others?
She was with me Friday night.
Was she?
We went to the 5:30.
Yeah, she's came and came and listened to him tell his story and all that. And I think your mom, and my mom, about the same age.
She, you know, she told me the first time she'd ever been to an AA meeting was my 4-year birthday, and she came.
I was there.
Yeah, yeah, but she'd never been to Alcoholics Anonymous. Didn't know anything about it, you know. And I had some family show up, and she showed up, surprised me, and they came. And when we left, you know, everybody's meeting her and talking to her and all that stuff. And when we left, she looked at me in the car and she goes, "Now I understand how you were able to get yourself straightened."
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "That's special in there." And I said, "Yeah, it is." So,
You know, I made my living amends to my mom by taking care of her when she had cancer. And she'd be handing me her car keys going, I think it's time for a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do give my mom a hard time, though, because I'm like, if you're mean, dude, just remember it's getting close to that time I get to pick the nursing home. You know what I'm saying? So let's be
I
nice.
think
Be
she's
sweet,
gonna
mama.
stay with you.
Yeah, she may. She probably will. But she's got more energy than me. I can't keep up with her.
Yeah.
So it's over with. But
That's because she doesn't eat meat, Matt.
that's right. She's healthy. And then she's getting on me about what I am eating while she's eating healthy. So, but
Yeah. I think it's really important to remember when we transition from the 8th step to the 9th step that our amends are something that are cleansing and healthy and good, not a punishment. Because when I first thought about the 9th step and having to make amends, I thought I was being punished.
Sure.
Why do I have to, again, victim mentality, why do I have to say I'm sorry? And thank God my sponsor was not saying to me, "It's okay, Jane." She's going, "Because you did something wrong, Jane, and
Yeah.
you got to make amends."
yeah.
And making amends is more than just saying I'm sorry. It's saying, and what can I do to make it right? And I hated that line. That
Yeah.
second part of the 9th step
Yeah.
was not what I wanted to hear. What can I do to make it right? And there are times when you had to make financial amends, and there are times when you have to apologize to people that you're the victim of because your response wasn't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not a case of being in trouble that you have to make a 9th step amends. And I just really thought that's what it was about when I first learned about it.
Yeah. This morning I woke up and I just automatically thought about an old friend. I mean, I grew up with her. And something that I said to her in high school that literally broke her heart. And it's so weird that that came in my head this morning. And I remember thinking, it's about time. Mm-hmm. It's been over 30 years. I should make amends. And she'll probably be like, what?
Do you have access to her?
Sure do. I'll see her this Christmas.
Mine was 40 years in the coming.
Yeah. And it seems insignificant, but the point is, like, it keeps coming up in my head.
Yeah.
And that's how I know, like, I've got to set this right. And it's really interesting how when you do this, you don't think about it again. I mean, you're just like, okay, done, taken care of. And again, there's just another my mouth getting myself in trouble.
So let me open a can of worms that Mike cracked the door on a minute ago with what he was reading, but I've been waiting to ask this one. So I want all y'all to answer this one because I know where I'm at on it. But did you have yourselves on that list?
Oh, absolutely not.
I didn't either.
Isn't it
Not at
funny how we're
first.
Again, I was the
self-absorbed,
victim.
but we don't put that on the to make an amends to ourselves?
Not at first. I did not until my sponsor said, you're missing someone.
Yeah, mine too.
And I was like, first of all, like, how do you know?
Who do you know? Where have you been? Have you been reading my diary or whatever?
And have you? This is the kicker part to that. Have you made that amends? I mean, is it?
Still working on it.
Yeah, I'm still working on it.
I think I always will.
That's the biggest struggle in this whole process is we just talked about grace for ourselves, but it's still like I don't know what that is, but it's like
I still will get consumed with, and it's always at night when I'm doing my nighttime prayers, guilt, shame, and remorse.
Really?
Things that I did to my dad mostly. My dad's been gone since I was 28, and I was extremely loaded at his funeral. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't face it without being loaded. And I think about the pain I caused my dad. And my dad actually told me he was very, very sick, and so he was on a lot of medication. We'll leave it at that. He told me I was the only one that ever gave him trouble. And I don't think he meant it to hurt me. He was just speaking out of whatever. So guilt, shame, and remorse still hits me today with 23 years sober. What could have I done different? And then I stop and I think, God, I hear the God whisper saying, you are doing something different.
Sure.
Yes, you are.
You know, so that's the grace that comes to me from God that tells me, give yourself grace.
And sometimes we listen to, the reason I bring this up, I had that kind of an experience the last few weeks with a person from the past that was bringing up some things, and you know, I have to sometimes just trust. I don't have to listen to that outside stuff from the angle they're coming from. And go, you know, I am making a lot of progress. Not at all happy with where I'm at now. I mean, I will be, but it is progress, and that's all I can do, you know. And sometimes we get those things in our head, you know. You sit or you get a quiet minute and you go, I should have done this, you know. And you just have to go, here's the result. This is where I was. This is where I'm at now, and I know I'm working on it. So. And that's all we can do. But I'm like Jill, I'm not done with that amends yet. It may be a long, long time. So
I think one of the worst sayings and the best sayings, it's an oxymoron in AA, is progress, not perfection.
Right.
Because that's how you give yourself grace, but that's how you make an excuse to do it again. And which side of the spectrum are you going to be on?
And sometimes, like, with ourselves.
So true. That is so true.
Yeah, but with ourselves, this is me only, okay? But I get clogged up in my own junk, and I let it get in my head like we're talking about. But then I go to meetings, and this goes back to being around a group and having a home group and having your people. And I see people come in, and I go, man, they're struggling, you know? And never a thought of me. It just sort of brings that back, and I go, yeah, you know, that was me not long ago. But then I see them work the program and do the stuff and actually stick to it, and then things start to go better. And you hear, I got a new job, and I made amends with my family, and I got my visitation with my kids, whatever it might be. And I go, God, this works. But I go, they've been coming in here 2 years now, and it's a slow process, you know, and it just reminds me it is a process, and I don't need to get bogged down in just the moment to moment junk sometimes. So, but
you will be disappointed.
Yes.
What's great about these steps is that the likelihood of me just going around hurting people, as long as I stay plugged in and staying spiritual, it's just doesn't happen like as much as it used to. And that's what's, I think what we're trying to achieve here is a changed behavior, so that we don't go around just continue to hurt people.
And then change behavior too, not intentionally hurting, but now when you do, it's real quick. I'm like, oh no, I need to fix this. Like I know I did wrong.
There's a step for it too.
Sure,
We're gonna
sure.
get to it.
It's coming up, and
Next.
Next,
it's
step 10.
But yeah, I mean, but this prepares us for, this 8 and 9 prepares for life in recovery. Basically, it's like this is going to be your. I guess if you were military, this would be the basic training part, and we're fixing to get on to life after, and constantly rework them. I promise I have to rework and rework and rework.
Well, so one thing I want to say before I forget it is I went to, in addition to all of my trips out to, the facility, and then I went to a lot of hospitals. Willis Knighton, 72 hour, the whole, a lot. I did that a lot, emergency room. And then I sporadically from the year 2000 to 2011 would attend an AA meeting here and there. And no matter what, I would always look up at that wall and skip through the first 8 steps and see step 9. And be like, there ain't no way.
Hell no.
Yeah, maybe I can do all but that one. Maybe, seriously, the rest of them were, I could, possibly not even make a list. There's no point if I'm not going to do step 8, And I learned in AA, fear is a, what is it called? A deadly and corrosive thread, or, and it can actually be a deadly and corrosive thread through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? If I let it be. So, but I would look at that step 9 and go, there's no way I'm going to make amends. I don't have courage. I'm just something. I'm like the lion on the Wizard of Oz, right? I was just born without courage, okay? Now I have found courage through the higher power. I have. Some of these things, some of these amends I made, I just had to just say, okay, I'm going to show up. God, I just need you to do the rest. I can't do it. And that's how it happened. But, because I just don't generally have courage when it comes to a lot of things. But I would see step 9 and I'll be, there's no way I'm going to do it. And that would ultimately be one of my many excuses for not staying in said program, whatever it was, whether it was Willis Knighton or Brentwood or any of the Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever the program was, because I did not want to make amends. And then finally, it got so bad, I became willing to do anything. And if I've got to make amends, I just have to make amends, And then in my head, I'm thinking, I'll figure out a way to do it. I'll figure out a way to do it where it doesn't look like, but there's 8 steps before it. Mm-hmm. There's 8 steps. And my sponsor kept telling me that we're not worried about 9. We're on 1.
Yeah.
Right. We're working step 1 here, and then we get to 2, and then 3, and then 4. By the time I got to step 9, it really was nothing like I had pictured in my head all those years. It was hard. It wasn't something I liked to do. Mm-hmm. It was the process is very, it brings about humility. How about that? Something that I needed. And but it definitely was not the way I pictured it going into these rooms and seeing it written on these walls. And I always say that's looking up there and going straight to step 9 always ran me out, because I knew I was going to eventually have to make amends. But no matter what, I was eventually going to have to make amends. No matter how I look at it, if I was going to stay alive or stay out of jail or stay out of an institution, I was going to have to make amends. And thank God for good sponsors. Man, that's just, I wish.
You ain't lying.
Man, just, because I'm thinking I'm going to have to do all this by myself. And again, I didn't have to. I had to make the amends by myself, but I didn't have to go into making this amends. And we talked it out. We talked about it. And the one time I went rogue, doing it on my own, didn't work out. So, and I make sure that, I try to make sure my guys visit with me before they go doing something like that.
Let me ask this totally random. So we have a lot of people on here, and they were talking about going to rehab, going to institutions, and then you brought up hospitals. Were you ever so hammered you checked in an animal hospital?
What?
See, there's new bottoms. There's always new bottoms if you keep digging. You know, just thought I'd ask.
To the
you know.
vet?
Well, I think once the insurance part rolls
That's what
around,
I'm saying. You know,
they're
Sorry, man, you're not covered.
yeah.
yeah, 3 minutes from euthanization.
Put him down.
Someone from AA came in and rescued me, Matt.
What happened to Mike? We put him to sleep.
Matt, is this like a common thing?
I'm sorry. I just
Who the hell does
me
that?
and Mike get in trouble sometimes.
I
One of
want
us.
to know
Someone did.
how he knew where an animal hospital was.
Well, you know, I'll leave that for another time.
I have no. The answer, no. I never.
It just occurred to me, but it's probably happened in the history of AA. Just saw a hospital wandered in.
Drink, Matt. The water.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. You know, I think no. I think that a lot of times I would check in because the feeling, I was so dehydrated and the feeling was so bad that, you know, there's nothing else you can do. And then going through the withdrawal process is just wasn't healthy by myself. You know, and there in the end, it was a common thing to go through the withdrawal process.
You had DTs, right?
Yes.
Yes. So a lot of people may not. Will you tell us about that for people that?
Okay. Well,
Well, first of all, alcohol withdrawals are fatal.
Yes.
Can be fatal.
and shouldn't be done alone.
Right.
But you know, prior to my coming in here and learning this, I would generally stop drinking about 18 hours before I had to be somewhere, whether it was work, whatever. About 18 hours. I would set an alarm when I started. Anyway, 18 hours was my standard. I would wrap up in covers, and could be 90 degrees outside. It could be whatever, but the heat was on, and I would shake and snot and puke and you know, heave, blood vessels bust in your eyes, and when it's finished, or it doesn't, I don't even know if it finishes, but I was like, I didn't even have like my hands were the muscles were so fatigued that I couldn't even hold a pen. And this was a regular occurrence. You know, again, very dangerous. Could have led to a stroke or a cardiac
Seizure.
arrest. I've had seizures related to alcoholism.
You're a real alcoholic, huh?
I am. Yeah.
Did you have hallucinations?
I never did. No, I never had hallucinations. I would have. Let's just say I was on a long bender. They call it in the big book a bender, but a binge, and I would have spots in time that I didn't know if they were real or if they were imagined. So I would be, just say today, you know, this isn't one of them, obviously, but let's just say right now, all of a sudden, I'm sitting here talking to Jill and Jane and Matt, and I have this 3-day memory of something that may or may not happened, and it's never good. It's always bad stuff that maybe I'm going to end up in trouble for, or going to end up in jail for, or, you know, and I don't know if it's real or if it's imagined. And so there was never any. So looking back, you know, now that I can put together a timeline, most of the time I was passed out. Nothing really was real.
Were you a blackout drinker?
I never drank and not blacked out. That,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that I can think of. I never drank and not blacked out. So if there was a time when I had a couple of sips and ooh, this is great, and let's, you know, but I can't think of a time in all the years because my body, I was alcohol dependent. So it was really a matter of drinking until I stopped shaking. And then once I stopped shaking, if I wanted to get the effect produced by alcohol, then I would drink a little more and go into a blackout, and that could last for days. Yeah. So,
Yeah. A couple of times I blacked out whole weekends.
yeah.
I was in treatment.
No idea.
And I think mine, and the reason I ask, and I'm interested in that, because Mike wasn't a drug guy, and I had both things going on, and some of the other stuff that also I was detoxing from was pretty bad. And I actually went to detox for a few days and then went to treatment, and I started going into serious withdrawal in the treatment center. And there was a guy was my roommate, and I would just lay there all night. I couldn't sleep. I was rolling into it, like Mike said, pouring sweat, all that stuff. And my roommate in there, he had some slippers on the floor. I can picture it right now. And they would just slowly slide across the floor in the dark. And there was a window, and the light was shining on the floor. And I'm just watching those slippers, and I would blink, and they would go back. And then they would do it again.
Right.
And this poor guy couldn't get any sleep. And I'm miserable, you know. And finally I was like, man, them slippers are moving. And he goes, I'll take care of that. And he got up, took the slippers, and he threw them out in the hall, and he slammed the door, and he goes, I'm going back to sleep. I was like, okay. But yeah, and that was the point they sent me on another mini detox.
Yeah.
So
You guys are making me think of how I've never detoxed. I went to the emergency room with a migraine so often so I could be shot up with Demerol and Viscril to get rid of the pain in my head because I felt like it was being hit with a sledgehammer numerous times. Wow. And until just now, I never thought about how I was reacting to it. I never went sober to the emergency room. Never.
Yeah, I don't think
I missed a Styx concert because of it. We partied
Styx.
so hard before the concert. On the way to the concert, we forgot our tickets, had to turn around, go back to
Lovely.
the tickets. I said, just drop me off at the emergency room. And they're like, say what? I said, just drop me off at the emergency room.
That was back when Dennis DeYoung was still with them.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw Sticks too.
Tommy
Have you
Shaw.
seen him?
No, I've never.
This was probably 1980.
In 1990.
I think I saw him in the 90s.
In 1999, I was rear-ended on a bridge in Bossier, the bridge, Jimmy Davis, by a truckload of people headed to the Styx concert at CenturyTel.
That's
And
what I would do.
They immediately started chunking alcohol over the bridge once they hit. They were in a company truck. They immediately started just going to the edge and just dumping ice chests full of stuff over the back because and traffic starts backing up, and that at Jimmy Davis back then, I don't know how it is now, but it was
same.
If it was cut off, it was cut off.
Yeah.
Same.
And it was bad.
Yeah.
It was absolutely bad. So the moral to the story on step 8 and step 9 is, number 1, get a sponsor and use that sponsor to help you get through step 8 and step 9. Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea.
The only idea.
Yep. That's
And,
exactly what I
And
was
the rest
thinking.
of them too, not just 8 and 9, but they're real important on 8 and 9.
And obviously do it. And it says, made our amends whenever possible. It doesn't say wherever possible. So whenever that's possible, to do it, just do it. But have a sponsor. That's the most important thing. And all of us, based on our experience, we've gathered that you get some relief from it. You get, maybe even be able to grant yourself a little grace, Matt, whenever you do that.
Working on it.
So that forgiveness of ourselves may lie somewhere inside of that amends process. So anybody got anything to add?
Good.
Just do it.
Just do it.
That's
Thanks
right.
to Jane. She's awesome to come out here on a Sunday morning and do this with us.
Yeah, thank you,
I'm on
Jane.
my way to a meeting.
There you
Awesome.
go.
We
gonna
appreciate you.
We're gonna send some shout outs now. So let's not forget. And as always, we want to thank our loyal listeners. We got Michelle, we got Faith, and Kim and Rhonda. We have Larry and Judy. Want to thank our folks in South Louisiana, Amy C. down in Lacombe, and Todd. I want to mention Todd. He led, obviously, him and Jane, they're married, they're a couple. She came to the studio today and helped us out with an episode. So I want to thank Todd for just being part of this recovery program. And I want to thank Bree and so many more we could thank. And just leave a voicemail, leave an email if you don't want us to play your voice on the air. It's GNB Bossier, BOSSIER at gmail.com. It'd be great to hear from you so that we could, give us some ideas. A lot of times I'm on my way over here and I'm thinking, what are we going to record? And I try to keep with the script, with the program. I also try to keep it as unscripted as possible, which reminds me I need to correct an error. And at the very end of this show, I said that I misquoted a step. And step 9 is made direct amends wherever possible. So I said whenever. I should not have said that. So I do want to correct an error on that before I get the emails and the phone calls. So thank you for listening, and next week we'll dive off into more recovery. So signing off from Bossier City, Louisiana, I'm Mike. This is the Grouch and the Brainstorm.